to tell them about the University of Illinois.
Sure. Well, and plus you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have texting, you didn't have email, you didn't have all these social media outlets that people can use today. Do you see that as a pro, as an advantage, or do you see it as a disadvantage or a con to recruiting?
Well, I think it's an advantage, but yeah, you really have to supervise that because people will abuse it. Some of the time it's easy to abuse that rule, but it's good. I think it helps the recruiting, there's no doubt.
Well, sure, and plus TV exposure. Look at all the games that are on TV today as opposed to when you were coaching.
Sarah, in 1970 at New Mexico State, we went to Final Four. None of the games were televised. Now, the championship game was in some areas, but now look, all of the games leading up, well, all of the NCAA games, the 65 games are televised in all the regionals, and so you have all kinds of coverage, and that really creates a lot of interest. Most of the states have a team in the NCAA, or they have teams in the area, and the television has done wonders to help the game of basketball.
And he ought to know. He watches every game known to man. Football, basketball, whatever. He's watching every one of them, whether he's retired or not.
And do you watch with him? What do you do when he's watching the 20 games?
I do watch quite a few of them, as a matter of fact. I usually have something going during that time, but I don't just sit there. But I do watch, just come in and say, oh, what's the score, and blah, blah. So I do, definitely. I'm very interested in the score.
Were you a fan of basketball before you met Lou, or did you become a fan of basketball after you met him?
I was a fan of sports because I was a cheerleader for 5 years before I met him. Oh. So I had 5 brothers, and I definitely was a sports fan before I met him. I grew up in northwestern Illinois, and of course Chicago was right there, where you had the Cubs and the White Sox and the Bears, and we were sports fans.
Sarah, now several things have changed, and I think the Rebounders will enjoy this statement. Rick Pitino, each year he draws $7.5 million. A lot of the basketball coaches draw $5 million. Well, when I started coaching, I taught 5 math classes. I had study hall. I had 2 coaches I had to sport.
This was at the high school level.
And on the high school level, and I brought home $271 a month. We had 3 kids, a car payment, house payment. See how things have changed?
Wow.
Another thing
they make that an hour today, right?
Right.
So.
And so here a couple of years ago, they had some of the retired coaches on a call-in show. And John Wooden was one of them. And this lady called in and said, Coach Wooden, somebody told me that your last year at UCLA, after winning 10 national titles, you were only making $36,000. He said, Miss, you're wrong. My last year, I made $32,500. So things have changed.
Big
after
time.
winning 10 national championships.
Big time. And how many assistant coaches did you have as opposed to now? It seems like they almost need another bench for today's team's assistant coaches. There seems to be a coach for every player. What is the difference of that?
I can illustrate it this way. My last road trip at New Mexico State, we were second to Louisville in the Missouri Valley. Now, if we beat either one of these teams, St. Louis or Bradley, we go to NCAA. Well, I left with no coach. I had 1 assistant, and he was on the road recruiting. I had one person with me, and he was the trainer. So I got ejected in the St. Louis game with 3 minutes to go.
Lou, you're telling that?
Well, I'm telling you,
Okay.
I got ejected. So I told the trainer, I said, you have to take over the team. And so I left. There's nobody. He had to coach. Well, later
I was there.
on,
You could have asked me.
That's why I said we had nobody to coach the team. But anyway, later in the day, I was talking with one of the players. I said, how did Mr. Westbrook, our trainer, how did he do coaching when I had to leave the game? Coaching, he didn't do any coaching. He started picking up the warm-ups.
Oh, that's all he did, huh? So they just kind of had to do their own thing until the end of the game. How many times were you ejected from the game?
My goodness.
Let's put it like
Not that all this will air, but
Sarah,
just in case we need
I was impeached 4 times.
You were impeached 4 times. That's pretty good. Over, and how many years?
Oh, 50-some years.
50-some years. Good gosh. gosh, 50 years.
Are you counting the times I impeached you?
And how many times with that? That probably what?
Oh, well, I couldn't even count. I couldn't.
You couldn't even begin.
No, I couldn't. I'd have to use my toes to.
After a loss, what do you do after a loss? What would you do after a loss?
Well, you want me to tell you about one of them?
Sure.
When I first came to Illinois, of course, the program had really been down, and we were losing games right and left. And so we're getting ready to go and play Purdue, and I told Mary, I said, we've got to win this one. People were calling for my resignation. One sports guy said I should be fired. And so I said, we got to beat Purdue. We overplayed Purdue, and we couldn't do a thing. They beat us about 20 points. So we came back home, and we did then what we usually do. Mary and I looked at the film. And as we looked at the film, it was so bad, she said, I can't take any more of it. So she left. So I looked at the film.
I went to bed.
So I looked at the film again, and again. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I was never so depressed in all my life. I picked up the phone. I called Suicide Hotline. I told them who I was and what was happening. They said, go ahead, we think you're doing the right thing.
You fell for that line and sinker.
Yeah, I did, and I want to make sure that's played too. So I think everyone else will fall for that as well. But okay, well, all right.
But we did watch the tapes together. You know, we'd have the tape of the game afterward, and of course he'd make the players watch if it was a loss or a bet. Well, we watched wins too.
Sure.
But we watched it on the bus driving home. You know, and the players could, and he'd, you know, instruct them a little if they had lost. He might instruct them a little as we'd come home watching the tape.
And it worked with the team, but it doesn't work in marriage.
Doesn't work with marriage. Ah, that's it.
Oh.
And how many years have you been married?
I'll let you answer that. Wow.
Just celebrated our 57th.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
57 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And Sarah, some of the times it seems like 100.
Hey, you know, 57, and a few of those were good years.
Yeah, I'm sure. Probably 3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of that, you have my last question to you is about your children, because you have 3 beautiful daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about them and what they're doing now, and how you grew up being a coach and a mother of 3 children with him being on the road a lot and games.
Well, our firstborn was a son, and we lost him when he was 35. He was following in his dad's footsteps at Parkland. He was the head basketball coach out there, and we lost him due to a car accident. And then we have the 3 daughters, and Lori and Fred are living in New Mexico right now, and she's teaching 1st grade. And Fred is between jobs right now, but he has several offers. He's trying to weigh them. And then Lisa lives in Houston, and she has a son, Evan, who is a baseball player at Rice. He signed with Rice Baseball, so he's a pitcher and 3rd baseman. So if you hear of Evan Rudder on Rice team, I hope you hear that name a lot. But anyway, we plan to go watch him play some, you know.
I bet you do.
And Leanne is in Loveland, Ohio, and she has 3 children. A daughter who's graduated from high school, a son who is playing basketball. He's a sophomore and doing very well, and Claire, who is 12. So, and then Lou Jr. left Lindsay and Lacey, and they're both married, and Lindsay produced our first great-grand.
Congratulations.
Yes, we have 1 great-grand now. We're thrilled about that. And guess where she lives? Right about 30 minutes from us in El Paso, Texas.
Wow.
We're in Las Cruces, so we get to see her when we're
Well,
down
you've
there.
managed to move them all south, with the
Well,
exception of the one in Ohio, right?
A few.
So,
A few. And
That's,
Lisa's in Houston.
right. Well, I
So.
know it was a huge loss when Lou Jr. passed away, and I know it hit me hard. on another note, because my college coach was killed in a car accident.
Oh,
So when that
yes.
happened, I thought a lot about that.
Yes, I'm
but,
sure you could relate.
I know you were very proud of him and what he did at Parkland and what he was doing there, and as you are with all the children.
Sure,
But, he was really doing a great
absolutely.
job. So.